Hello beautiful souls, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's your favorite YouTuber, Bridget Dana here, with the latest on narcissism and narcissistic abuse. So as mentioned previously, I'm going to talk a little bit about the cycle of abuse in this episode. Why is the cycle of abuse relevant? And what's its purpose? So the cycle of abuse is a pattern of behavior often seen in abusive relationships, including those involving narcissists. It consists of four main phases: tension building, incident, reconciliation, and calm. And then the cycle is repeated. So what do I mean by tension building? If you have been involved in a relationship with a narcissist, you will start to feel something is out of sorts. And you will sort of wait for the penny, not for the penny to drop, but for the next, let's call it episode, if you will. So there's a period of suspension, which is then referred to as tension building, where you know something is going to go down, which is not going to be good. Then you get the incident, which is the abuse thing. The abuse takes place. Then after that, there's obviously a period of, let's say, stonewalling, or where they ignore you, and then reconciliation happens. So oftentimes they will force you to apologize for whatever behavior. They will hardly ever apologize because they don't feel that they did anything wrong. So they will either force the victim into submission or into apologizing. And then once they have heard the apology, then there is calm, which is also called the honeymoon period. And then it all starts again. So this cycle can be repeated time-wise immediately. In other words, daily, the cycle can be repeated. Many events during the day, or it can be weekly, or it can be monthly, or it can be yearly. But ultimately, the duration between the period of calm, or the honeymoon period, and then the tension building can be up to 7 years, depending on which type of narcissist we are dealing with. So don't think to yourself, oh, but this only happens once in a blue moon. This person can not be a narcissist. Don't be fooled by it. Look for the pattern. Is there a definite pattern or not? The period of time is irrelevant in between the honeymoon period and the tension building and the incident of abuse. The period of time really is irrelevant, because sometimes you get caught unawares and you say to yourself, oh, but it's not that bad because it doesn't happen all that often. But that doesn't take away the fact that it remains narcissistic abuse, and that the abuse was done intentionally and to create harm. So don't lull yourself into a false sense of security. Rather look at it and face the facts and say, okay, but there is a definite pattern. I'm going to now see if I can identify the time period to the pattern. Because remember, the narcissists, they get very comfortable in their narcissistic role. And then oftentimes they cannot hide the fact that they are narcissists, and they need to abuse, because the action of abuse to a narcissist is likened unto the high that drug addicts experience when they do drugs. So don't think, oh, but he's not such a bad person, or she's not such a bad person, because it doesn't happen that often. If it happens twice, it's one time too many. if they immediately feel sorry and apologize, then that's maybe a different scenario to look at. But if it keeps happening and it keeps happening, then you have to think to yourself, wait a minute, something is not right here. What I also want to talk about with the cycle of abuse is the effect that it has on the brain of the victim and maybe even the brain of the narcissist. Because remember, this is a very unhealthy and a toxic relationship. And what the cycle of abuse does, it creates chemistry in the brain where, let's say you started with a honeymoon period. In the very beginning, I'm not talking about love relationships. In the very beginning, there's a honeymoon period, and it is a lovely, lovely, lovely honeymoon period. And they love bomb you, and they tell you they've never met anyone like you, and you've never ever made them feel, or they haven't met anybody that has made them feel the way that you make them feel. And they may be giving you gifts, and they are on their best behavior. And then there's a tension building period. And this will arise early on in the relationship because the narcissist has to have their fix. They have to abuse. So they cannot really go for long periods of time. You will find some that can go up to 7 years in between the abuse. But oftentimes in reality, it doesn't play out that way. So they need to abuse more than they would like to admit. It becomes an addiction, if you will. So the cycle of abuse creates chemistry in the brain where both the victim and the abuser becomes addicted to the cycle of abuse. So what happens is there's the honeymoon period. It creates all the feel-good hormones in the brain, dopamine, oxytocin, all of those that we need to feel good and to make us want to be in this relationship and to create a bonding. We love this person, really a genuine person. And then there's the tension period. So you feel on edge, something is going to happen. And then they snap, then the abuse happens. And your brain says, but how can this be? This was such a wonderful, the most caring person. He or she did all of this, or these were all of the actions. How can this be? And then there's the period of reconciliation. So however that plays out, it usually is the victim that apologizes. Or they say, I'm such a bad person. I don't know why I did this. I cannot control it. Please help me. Anything to get in your good graces again, because they know that you have empathy and they lack empathy. Or they will blame it on their circumstances or their boss or their parents or their upbringing. This is why they reacted that way, and please, please, please help them. And then the victim will say, oh, it's all right, I'll help you, don't worry, we'll get through this, something to that effect. And that cycle of behavior then spikes the dopamine in the brain in both the abuser and the victim. But the abuser gets his spike when he abuses, whereas the victim gets their spike in the honeymoon period. So, all is well, the dopamine spikes, and then there is that dip when the abuse happens for the victim, whereas for the narcissist it's completely the opposite. But that cycle creates an addiction, and that addiction obviously takes place in the brain, but it keeps the victim in the relationship. And that is what I talked about previously, the Stockholm Syndrome. That is where the Stockholm Syndrome manifests, where the victim cannot exit or escape the relationship because their brain is addicted to the relationship. So it's a very sick and a very toxic and a very, very unhealthy dynamic. But this is the facts of the situation. So the reconciliation in the calm period creates a honeymoon effect in the brain, and causes the brain chemistry to keep seeking this constantly in the victim. The abuser seeks supply, like it unto that of addicts seeking the next high. So that is just a very, very short, but very, very important video on the cycle of abuse. Because once we can establish, but there is a pattern, then you can start facing the reality of the situation. And, trying to make plans to either exit the situation or leave the situation. But the first clue would be, look for the cycle. Is there a cycle? Does this happen often? How often does it happen? Start to document the events. If you are not sure, if you think, maybe I think my brain is I'm going crazy, I've been stressed, I'm imagining things, start to document it, write it down, and write the date and the time and what happened. And then after a while, go back and look at what you've written down, and then you will see, but wait a minute, there's a cycle of abuse that's happening here, and this is not healthy for me. And then you can make the right choice for yourself. So thank you for joining me. I hope to see you all next time. Please, please, please share my videos if you feel called to. And I look forward to having you in my office next time. Bye-bye.